tonight. The Seoul High Court ruled another Japanese company must provide compensation to a victim of forced labor during wartime. Hitachi Zosen Corporation is ordered to pay the Korean national about $45,000. A former Supreme Court justice who served as the head of the Judiciary Department is summoned by prosecutors for questioning, accused of some 40 offenses, including using trials as bargaining chips and creating a blacklist of judges. Yang Seung-tae denies the allegations. Seoul's Ministry of National Defense unveils a 5-year spending plan. The funds will be used in implementing a comprehensive government reform scheme designed to modernize the country's defense structure, as well as preparations for wartime operational control transfer from the U.S. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Che. We begin with the latest in efforts to ensure Koreans forced into labor by Japanese firms during World War II receive compensations they deserve. A ruling came out today that Hitachi Zosen must pay one victim of that atrocity. Our Choi Si-young has the story.
On Friday, the Seoul High Court upheld a ruling by a lower court ordering Japanese manufacturer Hitachi Zosen Corporation to pay about $45,000 to a Korean national identified only by his surname E. E was forced to work at a shipyard in Osaka, Japan in 1944. There he had to work 8 hours every day for no pay. He barely made it back to South Korea on a smuggler's ship in 1945 when Japan was defeated in World War II. Similar to other recent rulings, the High Court dismissed the company's argument that the victim cannot seek damages because of the 1965 agreement between Seoul and Tokyo that restored their diplomatic ties. That agreement, is said, did not terminate the right of individual victims to file independent damages suits. In a landmark ruling last year, South Korea's Supreme Court openly acknowledged that principle. The High Court also said that it is against the principle of good faith that the Japanese company would deny the victim compensation just because the statute of limitations had run out. The court defended the compensation amount, roughly $45,000 as appropriate. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
And tensions over the wartime forced labor conflict between Seoul and Tokyo continue to escalate. South Korea's foreign ministry expressed its disappointment after a Japanese official criticized President Moon Jae-in's remarks on the issue. Park Hee-jun tells us more.
South Korea's foreign ministry has expressed disappointment over a senior Japanese official's criticism of how President Moon Jae-in has addressed the wartime forced labor issue. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said on Friday that his comments are deeply regrettable and call for Tokyo to be more modest in facing history. Japanese State Minister for Foreign Affairs Masahisa Sato took to Twitter on Friday, criticizing President Moon for saying that the situation can't be helped because the government cannot intervene in a judicial process. The same day at a press conference, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga accused President Moon of trying to shift South Korea's responsibility to Japan. During his New Year's press conference on Thursday, President Moon said it is not wise for Tokyo to politicize the wartime labor issue and stir up controversy. He also said South Korea must respect judicial decisions due to the separation of the legislative, administrative, and judicial branches of the government. He urged for more humility from Tokyo. Tensions between the two countries have been escalating ever since Seoul Supreme Court ordered a Japanese steelmaker to compensate South Korean victims for their unpaid work during World War II. And relations have become even sourer after a local court approved the plaintiff's request to seize some of the firm's assets in the country. Seoul is yet to respond to Tokyo's request for bilateral talks over the issue. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Here in the nation, a widening power abuse scandal. Prosecutors summoned ex-Supreme Court Chief Justice Yang Seung-tae this morning to question him over a number of allegations. Ahead of being grilled, he apologized to the public but strongly denied the charges against him. For details, let's turn to our Kim Mo-gyun.
Korea's former Supreme Court Justice Yang Seung-tae, who served as the head of the Judiciary Department from 2011 to 2017, defended himself and the court system on Friday in front of his previous workplace, the Supreme Court. Addressing the public, he denied the allegations against him, but apologized for what had happened during his term and said that he's willing to take responsibility.
The majority of our judges have been fulfilling their duties with their hearts dedicated to the public. I believe that my fellow judges who are related to the probe did not work against the law and their conscience. But even if they're found guilty, it's my fault, so I will take responsibility for it.
His speech at the top court was an unprecedented move, as majority of those who are brought in for questioning, including former Presidents Park Geun-hye and Lee Myung-bak, had to stand before the photo line in front of the prosecutor's office to answer questions from reporters. Opposing such action, hundreds of people from various civic groups and labor unions gathered on the road between the Supreme Court and the prosecutor's office, protesting and demanding Yang's arrest. Friday's remarks came 7 months after Yang denied all allegations against him last June, claiming the court's ruling is sacred and that it should not be denigrated. Yang has been accused of some 40 offenses, including using trials as bargaining chips in dealing with the previous Park Geun-hye administration to achieve his long-envisioned plan of establishing a separate court of appeals. Those trials include ones filed by Korean plaintiffs against Japanese firms that forced them into labor during World War II. Yang is also accused of creating a blacklist of judges based on their political leanings and of leaking confidential information. Facing such serious charges, the prosecution's questioning of the ex-Chief Justice is expected to stretch well into the night. Prosecutors are even considering summoning Yang back at least twice so that they can dig into all allegations. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Arguably the world's longest ongoing labor demonstration came to an end today. After reaching a deal with management, 2 employees at a South Korean manufacturing company came down from the top of a smokestack at a power plant after carrying out their protest for over 400 days. Seo Eun-kyung has the full story.
Today, 2 men came down from the smokestack in Seoul, where they have been for 426 days, demanding their jobs back. They're part of a 5-member union working for a small company called Fintech, which makes display equipment. Its parent company is called Starflex. The 2 separate occasions since 2010, Starflex has promised the 5 men years of job security, only to fire them both times. The first time, they won back their jobs after a protest lasting 408 days. To rehire them, Starflex set a Fintech. But only 9 months later in 2016, they were let go again when Starflex decided to close Fintech down. Under the deal struck today with Starflex, the 3 men from Smokestack and their 2 fellow union members will be guaranteed 3 years on the job. Their pay will be 89 US cents above the minimum wage, and the factory where they work will be reopened on June 1st. Seo Eun-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense ministry unveiled its latest spending plan. The budget's going to grow faster over the next 5 years than it has in the past in order to achieve stronger defense posture. Park Jo-won explains how the funds will be used.
South Korea's Ministry of National Defense announced Friday that it plans to spend some $242 billion on its 5-year defense plan that applies from this year to 2023. On average, it amounts to a 7.5% increase in spending each year during the 5-year period. It's significantly higher than the average annual increase of less than 5% during the previous 10 years. The spending includes the cost for implementing the Moon administration's Defense Reform 2.0, a comprehensive government scheme aiming to modernize the nation's defense structure to better counter ever-evolving transnational and non-military threats and challenges. Under the plan, about $84 billion will go towards the development and improvement of defense capabilities, which will increase on average more than 10% a year until 2023. A substantial proportion will be directed to improving the nation's capability to counter threats from nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction and preparing for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. in the near future. Acquiring military reconnaissance satellites, unmanned aerial vehicles, long-range air-to-surface missiles are part of the strategy. Ministry officials said this new strategic concept of countering nuclear and other weapons of mass destruction replaces the South Korean government's so-called three-axis system. There was a three-pronged strategy to counter mainly North Korean threats using the kill chain preemptive strike system, the Korean air and missile defense system, and the Korea massive punishment and retaliation strategy. The official said the change in name does not mean the previous plan will be reduced. Rather, it's being extended in a way better suited to a longer vision of the nation's defense posture. Research and development spending will also rise from this year's roughly 7% of total annual defense spending to 8.5% in year 2023. Regarding the cost for maintaining troops and military assets, some $160 billion will be spent, which amounts to a nearly 6% annual increase on average. Over $4 billion will be used to apply the latest technologies of the Fourth Industrial Revolution to make South Korea's military smarter, efficient, and stronger. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The South Korean government believes a second Pyongyang-Washington summit will happen at some point in the near future. At a parliamentary meeting on Friday, the nation's foreign minister said Kim Jong-un's recent trip to China reflects his desire to continue talks with the U.S. and keep his denuclearization promise. Kang Kyung-hwa also commented that it appears talks are underway between the two sides to settle on a location for the summit, adding Seoul will also closely communicate with Washington on the matter. As for the sanctions issue, South Korea doesn't expect relief for the regime anytime soon, as there are views that America has gotten nothing in return in terms of substantial progress towards denuclearization. According to the nation's foreign ministry, the top nuke envoys of Seoul and Tokyo spoke on the phone Friday about North Korea issues. Seoul's Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs, Lee Do-hoon, exchanged views with his Japanese counterpart, Kenji Kanasugi. They discussed recent developments related to Pyongyang, as well as joint efforts to establish peace and denuclearization on the peninsula. The U.S. Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in North Korea wrapped up his fifth visit to Seoul. At a press conference today, Tomas Oea Quintana stressed that peace should ultimately be to improve people's livelihoods and called on the international community to continue its humanitarian assistance while discussing sanctions to minimize impact on the people. Oh Jung-hee shares with us his remarks.
Nuclear negotiations with North Korea got off to a good start in 2018. Now it's time to put human rights on the table. That's according to the United Nations Special Rapporteur on North Korea's human rights, Tomas Oea Quintana, who was speaking Friday as he wrapped up his fifth mission to Seoul. Quintana pointed out that despite positive developments on the Korean peninsula for the past 12 months, the human rights situation in the north hasn't changed and is still serious. He stressed that any peace agreement will be fragile unless human rights issues are resolved.
When the parties discuss about peace, we are talking about peace for the benefit of who? We are talking about peace for the benefit of some other states, except North Korea, except the people living in North Korea. So the aspirations for peace needs to include the population from North Korea, especially those living in the countryside, will bring real benefit to the people from North Korea.
Quintana says the people in North Korea are in constant fear of being sent to political prison camps and exploited through forced labor. They face strict surveillance by the government and discrimination based on social status. The expert has made requests to visit the country for the past 3 years, but was never allowed and had no opportunity to communicate with the locals. He called on Pyongyang to open up to a human rights dialogue. At the same time, the Special Rapporteur called for continued humanitarian assistance to North Korea and discussions within the UN Security Council on their sanctions.
I also wish to repeat the call I have made to the Security Council of the United Nations to supervise the implementation of its sanctions with a view to ensuring that they do not have a detrimental impact on the people of the DPR Korea. Sanctions regime should also facilitate commendable humanitarian initiatives such as family reunions that have significant implications for human rights.
To the North, Quintana stressed that development and human rights go hand in hand. And to the parties involved in the denuclearization talks, he echoed President Moon Jae-in's remarks. Human rights are guaranteed through peace, and peace is secured through human rights. 우정희, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in pledged to get things moving this year in the consultative body. In a working lunch at the top office with lawmakers and the leadership of the ruling party, he reportedly expressed hopes the consultative body meets more frequently. Set up last year, the group is comprised of the Cheongwade, the political parties, and the government. The South Korean leader also urged the ruling party to take care of bills waiting in parliament. Moon has been trying to improve communications between all these groups so his administration can get better results from its policies. The consultative group last met in November. Its next meeting is likely to be in February. The nation's finance ministry released its monthly assessment of local economic conditions. Consumption figures look solid, but concerns over domestic and external uncertainties remain. Ko Ryuni has more from the latest Green Book.
South Korea's exports and consumption remain solid, but uncertainties over the ongoing U.S. China trade war and the semiconductor sector persist. This is according to South Korea's finance ministry's monthly Green Book report released on Friday. From December 2017 to September 2018, the ministry had said the local economy was on a recovery path. However, it has not used that term for 4 straight months now. The latest report specifically pinpointed uncertainties in the semiconductor sector. Separate data released by the Korea Customs Service show semiconductor exports dropped almost 30% during the first 10 days of January, compared to the same period last year. Analysts point to falling semiconductor prices. There's also lower demand because many data centers around the world have been postponing their purchases of semiconductors. These centers refer to centralized locations where computing and networking equipment is concentrated for storing or processing large amounts of data. The report showed exports went down 1.2% in December on year because shipments of home appliances dropped. Facilities investment tumbled by more than 5% in November compared to the previous month due to a decrease in machinery's investment. Overall industrial production also decreased by 0.7% during the same period, mainly in the manufacturing sector. On a brighter note, retail sales increased 0.5% in November. The ministry said it will monitor domestic and external risks and push forward with policies related to innovative growth to further vitalize the local economy. Ko Ryuni, Arirang News.
Seoul's Vice Minister of Economy and Finance held the first meeting of innovation-led growth with officials. Participants put their heads together to come up with ways to revitalize the economy. Hong Yu has the highlights from that session.
The South Korean government will invest $1.3 billion in data, artificial intelligence, and the hydrogen economy to support innovative growth. And they are looking at ways to invigorate the tourist industry in order to revive the domestic economy. This comes after President Moon Jae-in called for innovation to revitalize the country's economy on Thursday during his first press conference of the year. On Friday, Lee Ho-seung, the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Economy and Finance, held a meeting with officials on innovation-led growth in Seoul. The first step will be investment in energy as well as in industries such as data, artificial intelligence, and the hydrogen economy that can lead to innovative growth, which will subsequently boost employment. Lee says the innovative growth plan will be carried out over the medium to long term. The data market will grow to $26.8 billion in 2023, and the government will nurture more than 10 artificial intelligence unicorns, startups worth over $1 billion. The government will also actively support the hydrogen economy to maintain its world leader status. The specifics of how to invigorate the platform economy were also discussed in Friday's meeting and will be announced at the end of the month. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
5G networks are scheduled to begin commercial service this year in South Korea and a number of other global markets, meaning faster and greater levels of data transmission. With its rollout on the horizon, naturally 5G is a key theme at this year's Consumer Electronics Show. Kim Hye-sung follows us this report from Las Vegas.
There is so much more to come from 5G this year and the years to come. 5G will change. It will change everything.
Where does magic?
20 times faster than 4G LTE, a 5G network can transmit 20 gigabytes of data a second. It's more than just downloading a feature-length movie in a single second. With nearly no legs, it enables everything from the Internet of Things, smart cars, to telemedicine, where healthcare professionals can diagnose and treat patients from a distance. SK Telecom, one of South Korea's mobile carriers that launched 5G services for enterprise users last December, is showcasing how 5G can change the entertainment sector alone. Thanks to 5G's rapid-fire connection speeds, wearing a VR headset, users can sing karaoke or dance in the same virtual space, while in actual reality, they may be on the opposite sides of the world. Media companies like the New York Times also say 5G could be used for new, innovative storytelling techniques through interactive and immersive 3D images and video features. Automakers, equipment companies, and material providers are also highlighting how their chips can enable autonomous cars with high-frequency signals.
5G, first of all, enables a couple of additional things. Yeah, our technology helps to make things smaller, ever smaller structures, to create higher resolutions in displays, to enable faster switching times in semiconductors.
At this year's Consumer Electronics Show, mobile carriers, hardware, and software companies are showing us all a glimpse of what a 5G-connected lifestyle might look like and how they have accelerated their pace of innovation to make it happen soon. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
Athletes from Seoul and Pyongyang are competing as one at the World Championship of Handball. The joint squad campaign in Berlin was not off to a great start as they faced the home team Germany, a powerhouse of the game. But regardless, according to our Kan Young-woo, it was a memorable moment in the history of inter-Korean sports.
With 13,500 fans in the sold-out arena in Berlin, the unified Korean men's handball team stepped onto the court for the opening match against the #1 ranked Germany. It was the first time for the two Koreas to compete as one team in handball on the international stage. The 20-man squad, including 16 South Korean players and 4 North Korean players, put up a good fight against the heavy favorite Germany, but lost 30-19. The Korean team's captain Jung Soo-young managed to score the opening goal of the match, but the Koreans never took the lead again against the bigger and faster Germans. The home team closed out the first half with a 9-4 run to make the score 17-10. At the start of the second half, picking up where they left off, Germany overwhelmed the Korean players with 4 unanswered goals, and for the rest of the match, the inter-Korean team were behind by double digits. Seoul and Pyongyang agreed to form the unified men's handball team in talks back in November. Ahead of the World Championship, the joint team began training together in Berlin on December 22nd. The unified Korean team is in Group A with Germany, Russia, France, Serbia, and Brazil, and it will look to claim its first win when it goes up against Russia on Saturday. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach for the updates you need. Michelle, it's good that we have warm and comfortable weather, but the dust has really thickened.
Yes, Daniel, the westerly wind has been keeping us warm, but it's also bringing in some poisonous particulate matter, making it hard to breathe. Now, the toxic levels of air pollution is expected to continue until tomorrow, especially here in the capital region, while the southern regions will be freshening up by the morning. Now, starting tonight, Jeju will see rain of between 5 and 20 millimeters, while less than 5 millimeters can be seen along the coastal regions. And the inner southern areas will even get snow of less than 1 centimeter until tomorrow morning. And by Saturday afternoon, the weather will be brighter and warm, while Beijing and Tokyo will be cloudier than Seoul, but about the same temperatures. Seoul will kick off Saturday morning at 0 degrees Celsius, while Busan and Jeju can expect higher readings while even being drenched with some precipitation. And the nation's daily highs will be about between 6 and 10 degrees, Seoul reaching up to 6 degrees, while Daegu and Gyeongju hits 9. Mild readings are in the forecast for now, but without any rain, the dry conditions are getting worse, so make sure to be aware of any fire risks. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching. Here's wishing you an incredible weekend.